Good evening, Vante.
Okay, good evening. How was the past week for you?
Past week is all right. Just that, well, there is a little bit of issue. Maybe I should discuss with you later on. Or now?
Oh yeah, if you have depends on what kind of issue. Yeah, if it's
Yeah, it's about the when you ask from, let's say, one, two, three, four, right? After that,
okay,
going down,
all
then
right.
okay, open your eyes. It means
Uh,
that from four, go back to the base, right?
doesn't have to
Because
go back to
because
the base. All right.
yeah, I understand. What I
Mm-hmm.
mean to say is that from the high energy,
Mm-hmm.
then we go to the drop,
Mm-hmm.
because there is no maintenance of that energy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
somehow that energy, of course, but you say the reason of this is because of clinging. I
All right.
understand I have a lot of clinging.
Mm-hmm.
Then somehow, some of the energy actually, uh, do not go down very smoothly,
Mm-hmm.
so that it is kind of stuck, somewhere in
Ah,
the head
all right.
area.
All right.
That it cause certain tension, because I
Mm.
understand clinging causes tension. That
Mm-hmm.
tension, need to be released by
Mm.
doing some kind of management of energy,
Mm-hmm.
energy management. So I need
Mm-hmm.
to cool down slowly, slowly, slowly,
Okay.
then it can be released.
Mm. All right.
So
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. So if we have time, normally I will go back reverse order. 4, 3, 2, 1, then back to base
yeah,
point. Then we can neutralize everything, right? But sometimes, let's say in certain scenarios, if we are or certain meditation objects, they are trained to, let's say, like loving kindness. We are
hmm,
trained to sort of direct the mind to boundless different directions, right?
hmm,
It might end up in various concentrations as well. So we are supposed to maintain that, even in all walks of life. So some kind of concentration doesn't have to be neutralized, right? So let's say even if it's the fourth level of concentration, right? So if let's say we go about doing our normal activities, right? It will slowly dissipate over time. We generally dissipate over time. We just carry on with our normal
correct,
activities. That is
yeah,
the play cheat method, play cheat method,
correct.
right?
It
But
goes down, yeah, slowly going
yeah,
down.
yeah, correct. Yeah. So the formal way, if we have enough time, then we can go 4, 3, 2, 1, back to zero. Yeah. Then neutralize and then
That's better for me.
transit back to the normal activities. Yeah.
Correct. Uh, Sometime, but they four, then after that you have high energy, then
Mm.
you stop doing anything, but then after that you're doing your daily work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say you need to speak to somebody very fast, and then maybe you're a little bit annoyed by certain thing. That's kind of
Mm.
dangerous, because that clinging or that kind of negative energy will
Mm.
actually interfere. Then you become like you're not stable, in that sense.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
the
think
the
that can
found
happen.
so the foundation of the routine or the practice is always to emphasize on impermanence. Always to
Mm,
emphasize on impermanence. So it's to make it a habit, right? So if you go out to your daily activities, then you won't cling, right? So it takes some time to condition. So hopefully you can make it a habit.
all right.
All
Okay,
right.
Bante.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And this is a good point. A lot of times, initially, I also have this issue. When I first started learning from this in Singapore, this Amatagavesi method, right? I learned from this meditation course. It was conducted by a layperson, right? So because their system initially they don't incorporate impermanence, right? So a lot of students they have this energy stuck problem, energy stuck. They stuck at the head, stuck at whatever, and also they have a lot of headache issues. So very trained, very very skilled instructors are needed to go to the student and help them clear the energy. So they have to put the hand on the head, sweep here, sweep there, and sort of bring down the energy for them. So it requires a lot of effort, a lot of energy, right? So I'm not going to do that is online. Even in my physical classes, let's say I have 40 students, I don't have all the energy to do this kind of things. Right? Even for one person, I already find can be quite troublesome. So there's a way to prevent that is to be mindful of the impermanence. Right, so today we'll cover on the second half of the steps. So hopefully we can cover on the, probably the last 4 of the 16 steps, which has the impermanence element in it. All right, okay. How about Angie?
Good evening, Bante.
Yeah.
Still trying to grasp the method. Letting go, letting go. The mind is still like talking, letting go, letting go, letting go.
Okay.
If they reach the peaceful state, then we have to let go. Then my mind will be like trying to visualize letting go, letting go.
Yeah, so sometimes letting go cannot be forced. Yeah, letting go is the sometimes it's more like the middle stage process. Yeah, so the initial process needs to observe lots of impermanence, until you're sort of sick of it, then it will naturally let go. Right. So the initial foundation has to be observing this impermanence.
Still
all right.
Trying to get it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing. How about Hui Wen?
Good evening, Bante.
Okay, good evening.
I'm still trying to not control the breath. Sometimes a bit difficult.
All right. No problem. Today we'll cover something more in depth. So it doesn't have to be physical air. It will go into something deeper. I'll cover it today. So it won't be affected by physical air. Sometimes a lot of people have issues. Sometimes people have blocked nose, and they can't even feel the air.
Yeah, I think, and then sometimes I get headache also. I get headache, migraine quite often. So
okay.
then sometimes like if I focus on
you got
my
migraine
nostril,
like before meditation?
Since long ago.
Since long ago. Okay. So is it, what kind of condition? Is it because posture problem? Maybe some stretching might help.
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay.
Yeah, but at first I thought it's the eye, but I actually did an MRI scan already, but I'm not very sure. Maybe stress.
Yeah, sometimes might be a musculoskeletal issue. If you do enough stretching and the posture is correct, then a lot of these migraine issues can be resolved. It's more like troubleshooting. So we eliminate one of the possibilities first.
So if I focus on my nose, the breath in and out, right? Then sometimes it will cause me to tense up around my head area. I see. Even more.
I see. Yeah. All right. Yeah, because sometimes you're too engrossed, then then you might tense up the body. Yeah? So that's why it's good to before the meditation we have some kind of warm up, do some kind of stretching. Right, might help a lot.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Thanks for sharing, Hui Wen. It's 8:30. Maybe you can start the class if you want.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, welcome once again to MSPS Dharma Sharing Online. This event is jointly organized by Mahasatipatthana Buddhist Society Klang and Mudita Buddhist Society Klang. Today is Tuesday, 18 August 2020, and the time now is 8:33. Okay, a few housekeeping rules before we start. Display your name for easy identification. Make sure your audio is muted at all times. If you wish to ask a question, you may type your question at the chat box, or to ask verbally, you may raise hand, unmute and talk. Please turn off your microphone after finish asking. One person to speak at a time. During guided meditation, if possible, please on your video so Bante can see your progress. The meeting room will be locked during guided meditation session. Okay, MSBS is fortunate to have with us Bante Adhibalo, popularly known as Phra Goh. Bante was born on July 14, 1985. Bante had his Bhikkhu ordination into the Theravada tradition of Thai Dhammayut sect at Santi Forest Monastery in Johor, Malaysia in 2008. He spent the first 5 sprints retreat at various forest monasteries in Malaysia and Thailand. He is currently Vice President of Palelai Buddhist Temple, Singapore. Bante will be leading the homage to the Buddha and taking out the 5 precepts for Buddhists. Okay, Bante, there's a request. Maybe you can say something about yourself. Introduce yourself.
I thought you introduced already.
Yeah, other than this one, they want more in-depth.
What kind of
Who you
info?
are? I don't know.
My weight.
There's a request.
What kind of info?
Maybe why you joined the monkhood.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can find this in the Straits Times. I'm actually being interviewed before by the one of the newspapers in Singapore, right? So mainly it's because some family issues. For some, my parents have some issues. Then when we face issues, sometimes we look for solutions, right? So I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Buddhism at an early age. My dad sort of brought lots of free distribution Dhamma books back home. So in primary school, we have this free reading kind of period where we are supposed to read storybooks. So those days I don't have storybooks, so read Dhamma books. So those days I read these small little pocket-sized books by the late Venerable Dr. K. Sri Dhammananda. So that was like the starting point. So basically I have no idea what I'm reading. I'm too young to understand what I'm reading. So basically it's mostly stories, stories of the Buddha. Right, the rest of the theory I can just sort of skim past. But I have a very naive kind of aspiration, want to become a monk. Right, so it started from there. So I think that was the initial seed being planted, and over time, then when issues come again, then this thought come, wanting to become a monk, sort of the momentum, starts to build up. Yep.
So was it previous karma that brings your choices, or is there any other explanation?
I would say there are many conditions, many conditions. Whether it's past karma, I don't know. But in this particular life, I mean certain conditions, certain factors. That's why I make certain choices. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay. That's all for now. Okay. Let's compose our mind and invite Bante to give us the guided meditation and Dhamma talk.
All right.
Okay. Over to you, Bante.
Okay. Thank you, Terence. Okay, so for Buddhist friends, we have to do this chant, right? So we calm our minds down with reverence, and we chant the homage. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. 3 refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Suramiraya majjapamadatthana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. All right, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so good evening to everyone once again. Today is the second episode of Mindfulness of Breathing. Initially, I thought the Tuesday session would end this month, but then Terence invited me to carry on the Tuesday sessions. Right, so I'm going to, instead of rushing to finish the content, I will take my time now.
Sadhu.
So there will be more filler episodes. So we're going to have a short run through, like most programs. They have like a short recap on the past episode. So we just covered on the preconditions, the benefits of this breathing meditation, right? Then followed by the physical setup, right? What we need to do physically and also mentally. Right, next slide. Right, so things to prepare, right, when we sort of go to meditation. And next slide. Okay, so we've covered this, right, mindfulness of breathing earlier on. Somebody asked a question, or maybe some people do have this problem where they cannot feel the breath, the physical air, cannot feel. How? Cannot feel. We breathe in, breathe out, sometimes nose blocked, right? Sometimes nose blocked. Or sometimes, let's say, worst case scenario, maybe hospitalized, right? And then people put all the tubes inside your breathing apparatus and stuff like that into your nose, your mouth, your throat, and everything. Then you cannot feel the air coming in and out of your nostril anymore, right? So for those who are still breathing okay, still can feel the breath, take this time to train well, so that in future, right? In future, when you have issues, then you have backup plan. You can feel something else. Okay, so for those who cannot feel the physical air, then there's alternative. Feel the abdomen. Feel the abdomen. Can you feel the abdomen rising and falling of the abdomen? So just one small area of the abdomen. Don't have to feel the entire lung capacity, you have to feel the entire windpipe and lung. So we are just going to, also for those who cannot feel the air around below the nostril, then you just feel the abdomen. There are some practitioners who come to my classes and also say the same thing. Oh, I've been practicing a certain method and feel the abdomen for so many years already. So whenever you ask me to feel the nostril, cannot, the mind straight want to go to the abdomen. Then okay, naturally, if the mind can anchor at the abdomen, by all means, please anchor at your favorite regular spot. So this is the whole idea of unifying the mind, finding this one pointedness. right? So for those who cannot feel the physical air below the nostril, then second option below at the abdomen, right? So this is the backup plan. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide. So so we touched on this last week, that mindfulness of feeling, the whole idea of this breath meditation is geared toward samatha practice. You need some pleasant kind of incentive, pleasant feeling to draw the mind together. So if it is vipassana kind of practice or purely vipassana kind of practice, then they will include also unpleasant and perhaps neutral feeling as well. So this one is more trying to unify the mind and make the mind settle and calm down. So there's total of 16 steps. So last week we covered like half. There's 8 steps, right? So this is the feeling part. So the mental and the physical fabrication, we're supposed to calm down, right? Okay, and next one. Okay, so today we're starting something new, which is mindfulness of the mind. Mindfulness of the mind. So mind is a very interesting thing because mind cannot see, cannot be quantified, cannot be measured. Physical body, yes, you can measure scientifically, your weight, your volume, the mass, density, whatever you want to measure it. But mind cannot detect, how to measure, right? So mind is more of towards perception, individual perception, right? So let's say if we place our attention here, there is an element of this attention, this consciousness being present. That's why you're aware at one spot. There can be 1,001 things going on in the world. Why do you choose to pay attention to here? Right? Why can you only pay attention to here? Because you direct your attention here. So this attention is the mental aspect. This attention is called the mind. Right? So if you pay attention to the screen, you're watching the screen, so our attention, our mind chooses to be at the screen. We pick up details at the screen, right? We don't care about what our heart rate, our heart beating, whether our stomach is hungry or full, right? We don't care about that unless we move our attention there, right? So our mind can pick up things based on our, we call it this, the element of observation. The element of observation. So basically in Buddhism or rather in most religions also, we are trying to find the root cause of the problem of suffering, of stress. Normally when we talk about physical air, that is the external thing, external issue, right? So as we look inward, look deeper, or when the mind transits and becomes calmer or more sensitive, right? We pick up the mind, start to pick up, detect the mind, right? So when you pay attention to something, that attention has different states. It can be restless, can be agitated, can be scattered. It can be full of greed, full of anger, full of delusion. So this one is we've covered in these 4 foundations of mindfulness. The third foundation, mindfulness of mind. So there are many, many states of mind, right? So as we practice the meditation, then we can observe, before we radiate loving kindness to the breath, there is a certain emotion, a certain frame of mind. So that is a kind of mind that has some element of aversion. Some element of aversion. So after we induce loving kindness, then there is a lack or reduction of aversion. So we have to take note of this emotion or this state of mind, right? So we can move on, right? Next one. Okay, so this one is complementary to the previous 4 steps also, mindfulness of pleasant feeling. So when we induce loving kindness, for our routine, when we induce loving kindness to have this pleasant feeling, right? So we are basically also being mindful of this state of mind. So it's kind of comes together. But the Buddha likes to lay out all the things in we call it in Buddhism. Our Theravada Buddhism is initially known as the school of analysis. School of analysis. We like to break down things into many parts, many steps, and we analyze one by one. Right. So now we are analyzing all these steps. Then once you are aware of the state of mind, the emotion, and when the mind is contented, satisfied, then the mind can calm down, which is the mind is steady. Right? I will breathe in, steadying the mind, then you breathe out, steadying the mind. Okay, next. And then when you breathe in, releasing the mind, and you breathe out, releasing the mind. Okay, so this step can be akin to this the different, going to different levels of concentration, different levels of jhanas. But again, in this Anapanasati Sutta, it didn't mention in detail yet. There is another sutta which we will cover. I'm not sure whether this today's lesson can cover. Maybe the next lesson will cover. There's a Dipa Sutta, DIPA, which includes these 16 steps. And the Buddha mentioned these 16 steps can lead to all the different jhanas. So for the step we are doing, how to steady the mind, right? So when we calm down the mind, right, the mind will settle and then hit a spot where it cannot settle any further. This is called steadying the mind. So for our routine, we add on another element, which is the next 4 steps later to help to settle the mind further and to help steady the mind, right, before we start to release. So if let's say a person does pure samatha without any form of vipassana, then they will do this. From step 1 to step 12, make the mind still and make the mind calm, then hopefully they can enter deeper states of concentration. So this is very time-consuming process, a very time-consuming process, right? So normally, because the mind tends to cling, right? So without the element of wisdom and this further letting go, then some practitioners may require additional kind of steps to help to firm or settle the mind. So some practices might include, let's say from the simple one, like for example, practicing your precepts very well. Practicing your precepts very well. So some people might take more precepts, so they avoid a lot of things. A lot of things they don't do, they just stay in their room, stay in their hut. So avoid a lot of contact. Right? So it's easy for the mind to sort of settle down. So this is for some people, they might require to do these kind of things. And maybe in the Thai forest tradition, even some they practice fasting. So actually in the Orthodox Buddhism, we actually don't encourage fasting. So the fasting, the definition here is not eating the whole day. Not eating the whole day. So this is the definition of fasting, right? So even for Buddhist 8 precepts and above, so they have this thing called not eating after noon. Not eating after noon. So they can eat from daybreak, that means morning, till noontime, before 12. Right? So this is some 8 preceptors, they want to follow this routine, might help them in their meditation. So the less they think of food, then the easier for them to settle down, more time to meditate also. So I'm sure if let's say after taking dinner and then you meditate, end up you fall asleep, right? Because all the food out of the blood will go to the digestive tract. Right, so and then for monastics, there's even additional kind of vows called the 13 ascetic practices. 13 Thanga vows. So one of the 13 vows is to only eat one meal a day. Eat one meal a day. So interestingly, there's no fasting. Buddhist asceticism, there's no fasting. So it's still one meal a day. Right? So instead of the ordinary precept, which is you can eat from morning, daybreak to noon, some people within that time frame, they can eat 2 meals and 3 meals and 4 meals. They have brunch, breakfast and brunch and lunch. So they can take many, many meals. So in order to avoid keep on thinking of food, some people, they just take this vow, 1 meal a day. So they can choose any time within the specific time frame from daybreak to noon, and they just take 1 meal a day. Then they can forget about food for the rest of the day and focus on the practice, right? So some people take a step further, like I mentioned, maybe some of the forest tradition practitioners, or even maybe other traditions, they might want to practice full day fasting, which is outside the Buddhist kind of syllabus, and they might find the mind very calm. Some people, they practice initially when they deliberately fast themselves. One of the initial phases is they become very, very weak, lack of energy. So when the body is weak, then they won't think of, I want to go do this activity, do that activity, that kind of stuff. So it kind of reduces a lot of options for them. So it's a kind of forced kind of restriction. So this is when the mind is sort of weak and lack of energy, then somehow it's sort of naturally kind of settles down. So this is one kind of option for those who rely on this fasting method. But of course, in Buddhism, the natural fasting method is the preferred option. Natural fasting, which is if a person does enter very, very, very deep states of concentration until they forget time. No concept of time is gone. Then they forgot night and day, and they just enter very deep states of concentration. And people call you, you also cannot hear. Then if they skip their meal by using this process, then this is the natural kind of fasting kind of method. It's not imposed kind of fasting. So the natural fasting is somehow still acceptable in the orthodox kind of Buddhism. Like for example, the Buddha himself, after he got enlightened, he went to deep states of meditation. I'm not sure, maybe some of the records say 7 days to 49 days. Consecutively, he can just sort of enter into deep states of concentration and sort of forget about food, right? So this is the account of natural kind of fasting, right? So like again, in the previous retreat sessions, we talked about calming the mind. There are certain practitioners who practice this visualization practice. So some people can have so-called superhuman abilities. Like for example, fasting or this suspended animation is considered one of them, right? So for our routine, our practical session, we will not be doing any of such things, right? So don't expect your heart rate to stop, your brain to stop functioning and live in suspended animation. So no, we won't have this kind of extra kind of abilities. So our concentration here is just enough for the mind to be calm and contented so that we can go and investigate the phenomenon of mind matter, right? So this is the kind of concentration we are doing here. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, so now this is the Dhamma part, the wisdom aspect. Okay, so to have a whole or holistic kind of breath meditation, right, we should include this, we call the vipassana element, the wisdom element, right? That means we breathe in and out and try to observe impermanence. So impermanence is always the first step. Now, of course, some traditions, they have other kinds of contemplation. They contemplate maybe emptiness or non-self, or whatever it is. They have very very deep philosophical kind of contemplations, which all lead to insight and wisdom, nothing wrong. But the most obvious, the most evidential kind of thing which you can observe is impermanence. This is the first step. So next slide. Next point. Right. So once a person observes impermanence long enough, then naturally there will be a sense of dispassion. You'll get sick of the breath. You get sick of the breath, right? Not dispassion in a negative way, but dispassion in a positive way. That means the mind won't want to cling on to the breath. Right? There's a circular kind of dispassion, like if a person's sick of a hobby, then they change hobby law, where change activity. So it's not this kind of dispassion. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So breathing in out, right? Focusing on cessation. Okay. So once, okay, cessation means when there's a dispassion, right? Interestingly, then when you breathe in and out, then the mind will, there's a form of ceasing. That means a lack of reacting, a lack of reaction, lack of clinging. So this is meant by cessation, ceasing the activity of clinging, of reacting. So we normally react with greed or hatred, right? We like the breath, so we have greed, we pull, or have hatred, we push, want to get rid, we find it annoying, want to destroy. So there's a form of reaction. So when there's a cessation of reaction, cessation of this desire or this passion, right, then eventually it will lead to the final step, which is relinquishment, which is letting go, right? So earlier on, maybe NG for saying letting go, right? So that is the middle stage, which is the probably one of the byproducts. So initially, if you want to know the conditions leading to the letting go, impermanence is always the first and the safest step. Then you can work your way up. Right? Some people might straight away want to think of nothingness or emptiness. Now, of course, nothing wrong. You can think of that, but there is an initial step first. You need to have certain progression before you think of certain higher kind of concepts. All right. So we covered this for today because now it's 9 o'clock. So we have covered 16 steps of the breath meditation. So it's all linked actually together. Maybe certain steps like maybe loving kindness first when we do our practical session. And once the mind is settled, then we introduce the Dhamma. When the mind is rather calm, then we introduce this concept of impermanence to help the mind even settle further. And before we release the mind. So it's not from step 1 to step 16. So it's a bit of jumping here and there. All right. So any questions from the ground or from the chat or from the Facebook comments? No questions? Wow, all no doubt.
One day.
Yes.
Okay, there's one for me. Later, can you please guide us more on the rapture and pleasure part?
Okay, can.
Yeah.
All right.
How to gladden the mind.
Okay.
Bante, Brother Jen Lim has raised his hand.
Oh, okay, yes. Jen, yes.
Yeah, Bante, is this the focusing on cessation, relinquishment? Is it what you call the Nirodha Samapatti?
Okay, because this cessation can be done at any phase of concentration, even step 0, without any jhanas. There can be this step already. So it might require a very, very long time. Let's say a person doesn't want to enter jhanas, doesn't want to enter concentration, and they want to just practice impermanence and letting go without this jhanic concentration. Yes, can be done. It will take a long time before reaching the final Nirodha.
So, so it is not Nirodha, but so Nirodha actually must go to the high level jhana first, then can go there. Is it the same?
Yeah, there is a jhanic kind of Nirodha, which is after a person enter the 8th level of concentration and they go further beyond that. So that is the sort of the Sutta definition of this Nirodha. Nirodha, yeah.
Okay. All right, Bante.
All right. Okay. Then of course there's more like a wisdom kind of approach. If a person don't want to sort of enter all the levels of concentration, then it's basically a lot of reflection on impermanence. Yep.
Okay, Bante.
So the simile I would like to give metaphor would be like, let's say driving car, there are different gears, right? So so for this case, there's 8 gears, total of 8 gears. So we travel at different speed. Some people maybe can't afford, maybe they don't have the conditions to get a vehicle, so they prefer walking, right? So they travel by foot, also can reach the destination, no problem. Some people, maybe they want to go first gear only. They drive first gear all the way, also can reach the destination. But maybe different speed, that's all, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Bante, I have a question. You just went through the slide, it says that he trains himself breathing in sensitive to the mind. That means it's a physical thing, or we're breathing in, we keep track of what is in our mind, is it?
Okay, the mind here is not the thoughts, it's the attention. So when we feel something, there is a mental element to it. There's the attention.
Okay.
Right. So when a person gets more sensitive to the mind, then they will just feel the mental attention instead of the physical air. Right. So initially, we need the physical anchoring, right, to anchor the mind. Physical object to anchor the mind, like the breath can be below nostril or even at the abdomen, right, to anchor the mind, to bring the attention to that spot. Right? It's just a tool, that's all. Right? So I give the worst case scenario. Let's say, if a person hospitalized or maybe in a coma, they can't feel the physical body anymore, right? Or maybe they're paralyzed, they can't feel the waist down, they can't even feel the abdomen, then how? Right? So there is the mental aspect. So if a person is well trained, in this attention, then the next level of training is to don't put here anymore or don't put here anymore, right? If let's say you're game enough, want to take up this challenge, let's say next time you meditate, you have neck pain or shoulder ache, you put your attention there. See whether your mind can get neutral, can calm down and enter the different levels of concentration, right? Or even at any posture, not just sitting, lying down. How can you enter the different levels of concentration? So this is another kind of training.
Okay, thank you.
All right, okay, no problem. Okay, any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
I have a question. Can you repeat the explanation for satisfying the mind? Because I think just now you mentioned something about analyzing, but I don't really understand what it means, to satisfy the mind.
Okay, basically when we have the loving kindness element, when we make the mind peaceful, we observe the breath, and when the mind starts to calm down and doesn't get so restless anymore, so that is basically calming the mind. There are different levels of calming, so I can't explain with words. This one you have to go through the meditation sessions, and each time you sit might be different. You have a different kind of high score. Sometimes you get more peaceful, sometimes not so peaceful. So you have to know for yourself. So every time you read the scripture again, then you have a different meaning. So it's the wonder. So every time we always revise and revisit, then we reinterpret again. All right, so does it answer your question?
Okay, thank you.
All right, okay, no problem. Any other questions from the ground? Okay, if there's no questions, then we have a 5-minute break. So like 9:10, so 9:15 we come back. So you can do your stretching and make sure you don't have so many aches and tensions. Or maybe go to a toilet break and we come back at 9:15 for the guided practical session. Right, see you all later.